Coffee with the Coastie is brought to you by On the Coast Publications, the publishing house for On the Coast families and On the Coast over 55 community magazines on the central coast of New South Wales. Welcome to Coffee with the Coastie. Today we had the pleasure of chatting with Kerry Davenport. In 2017, Kerry was diagnosed with complex PTSD, severe depression and anxiety. Then over the last 5 years has gone on to reinvent herself and released a book in 2022 along with others to help elevate people's performance in life, titled Elevate Your Performance. It is truly a blessing that we still have Kerry here to talk to, as she mentions on her own website that a miracle of sliding door moments or universal intervention stopped her twice from taking her own life. Kerry now says that she is extremely grateful to have experienced everything that she has, as it fuels her passion and purpose to serve and help others through the same dark emotions. So it is now with absolute gratitude that I get to sit down and chat with Kerry. Welcome, Kerry.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kerry. And I've been lucky enough to sit here and I've had to, as you said, I've had to say, all right, let's stop. Let's record this interview because Kerry's full of a wealth of information, and I wanted to sit here and chat about that. Kerry, let's start with, you're a certified life coach. Can you talk about what it is that a life coach does for people?
I think a life coach, there's so many things that a life coach does do. And we help someone see outside of where they are. We take them, when we're standing in the problem, we might be standing in the box of anxiety or depression or, a lot of people will say, I'm just stuck in life. I just don't know how to go. It's hard to solve that problem when you're standing in it, when you're living in it day in, day out. And what a coach does is it helps you identify what's important to you. It helps you identify your goals, and then it helps remove the blockages, those limiting beliefs. There's three major things that affect us: limiting beliefs, trapped negative emotions, and values conflict. And a coach helps the client remove those three roadblocks, if you like, and create what we call a values-driven vision. And so we connect their values together along with their vision, and that empowers them to go forward. And a coach is a bit of everything, but the client is their own best healer. There's no doubt about it. Everyone is their own best healer. And sometimes all people need is to be able to clear the stuff out of the way, get some clarity, get some structure, and have someone in their corner that's motivating them and keeping them accountable. And every client is different. Everyone works different, but anyone that is willing to change, is willing to do the work, that's what a life coach is for.
To help them, guide them through that work.
Yeah, to bring them through.
Yeah.
So
I think some of it we don't realise we need a coach or a life coach. Sometimes it's a bit of a one of those things, like we see a coach for sport, we see a coach for whatever, but don't realise, I'm sure in most instances, those people that are at that level in sport actually have a life coach as well, not just a coach that's teaching them or helping them with their athletic ability.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Luke. If you look at any sports person or sporting team, everyone has a coach. But if you were to look at any famous actor, anyone at all, they've all got coaches. Whether they're actors, whether they're business people or anything like that, they've all got coaches. And it's because you can't see your blind spots. You can't see what's holding you back or what's stopping you or anything like that. And when we're open and receptive, to being the best version of ourselves, obviously, a coach, a life coach is look at Ash Barty, classic. She had a life coach and a sports coach when she was playing.
Yeah. It's the sort of that's probably who would come to mind actually when I was talking about that. What do you think it is? Because I know, like myself included, like I've never gone down that path of a life coach or anything like that, through lack of potentially just fear, probably, or not knowing the unknown, or thinking, oh, do I really need it? Like, I'm just a normal human being, that sort of thing. Where does it fit in with that? Like, with regard to like just the everyday person and helping that person and that person going, actually, a life coach would be of benefit.
Great question, and a very difficult question to answer. I can only answer it from my own experience. When I had the breakdown with the PTSD, the final breakdown, I was sectioned. I was in Canberra at the time. They had to get my firearm, which was in Sydney, and secure it. And then finally, when I was allowed back to Sydney, I had to see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And I was in a very bad state, a bad way, as you can imagine, mentally. I was going through some pretty dark times. But as I traversed that journey, I just remember, like, I must have been only, 6 months into the journey, and I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't getting any answers when I spoke to the psychologist or psychiatrist, and I just felt like it was Groundhog Day every time I went in, and nothing against them. They're just who I am. And anyway, a friend of mine, I said, what about a life coach? And so I contacted a lady I knew in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And she coached me for a number of, I think it was about 2 months. We would get in contact every Monday night, I remember, from Hong Kong. And she gave me structure, simple structure. She knew I had PTSD. She knew I was seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist. She knew at the time, I was still abusing alcohol. And but she gave me structure, and all I needed at that time was just that little bit of clarity, that little bit of structure, which gave me a little bit of certainty and a little bit of control of my life, which is what I didn't have. I had no control, I had no certainty. And then that little tiny drop in the ocean is what was that enough for me to go, I want to be a coach. Even though I still had PTSD and I still didn't know what I was doing with my life and all that sort of stuff, I just thought, I want to be a coach. And so then I went on to do a coaching course, which was more for me than it was to become a coach. And then that just gave me another little bit of hope. And then I went on to do something else and something else. And then that's how it just started evolving. Because the difference for me is we're different the way that we learn. Some of us are visual, some of us are auditory, some of us are kinesthetic. And so where a psychologist and psychiatrist may work for some, their thing, I needed to know why we were doing what we were doing and how we were going to achieve it. And so today, as a life coach, for me, the biggest thing I found was I obviously engage with the client, and so we're doing auditory. We engage with their feelings, that's kinesthetic, and then because I use a lot of whiteboard stuff or show them stuff and everything like that, now we're doing visual. We got a lot more chance of change because we're taking in everything. We're not just sitting there letting the client just talk over and over and over of their trauma in the past. You know what I mean? So everything that worked for me, I went back and did, and everything that didn't work, I made sure and I promised I would never do to any client.
Yeah.
So I was just driven by my own experience.
Yeah. You served in both the fire brigade and the police force for many years. You sort of touched on it just then, but how did you and why did you become a life coach?
So I was a retained firefighter for 5 years at Terryville in the 90s, and then I joined the Australian Federal Police in 2000. When I had the breakdowns, first to 215, as I came out of child protection operations, and then I tried to push through that and prove that I was okay and that I could do my job and tick all the boxes and all that sort of stuff. But then finally succumb to memory loss, actually, and night terrors in 2017, and everything just collapsed. As I was coming through, I remember, I've never forgotten this, I was sitting on this beach, and I was in this very dark moment, and I was going to take my own life. And I remember just crying, and just all of a sudden I'm having this conversation. And I didn't know who I was having. I didn't know I was having this conversation with, and it turned out I was having this conversation with God. I know that now. I'm a big believer in God today. And And I just remember saying, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I've got no, I've failed you down here. You know, it was a really dark conversation, real dark about me failing and not, and just everything and all this. I was so disconnected from from my soul. I was disconnected from what I was. I was just so lost. And then I remember having a saying that if I'm meant to stay here, you need to show me I'm meant to stay here. And if I'm meant to stay here, and I survive this, I will serve you for the rest of my life. I've never forgotten saying this. And anyway, that night I was stopping with people where we were, and they'd all gone out. I didn't. And I had it all planned out the next day, how I was going to do it. And then all of a sudden it was interruption after interruption after interruption. I won't go into the events of the night, but just things that happen. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, okay, well, I don't feel too bad at the moment. All right, we'll just see how I go tomorrow. And then that's how it sort of happened. I kept getting these sliding door moments, these interruptions. And then, you know, I ended up buying a ticket to Unleash the Power Within. I don't remember buying it. I end up going. I walk out of there. I know my purpose was to use everything that happened to me to help others. I realized that everything I experienced, every trauma, every emotion, everything that happened to me as a police officer, everything, even just from my adoption, was meant for me to use to help, to empower me to help others. And I honestly, to this day, categorically know that is true. Mm. And so then I did this tipping point and this U-turn and started, I just totally changed my whole direction. I still needed to work through everything. I still needed to release a lot of trauma from the body. But I stopped looking at I stopped looking at life the way I did and started looking at it differently, you know, because, you know, when we change the way we look at things, everything changes. And that is so true. That is so true. When I stopped being a victim, when I stopped looking, you know, oh, the woe be me and I can't do my job anymore, the one and only job that I wanted to do and loved, and, you know, I'm not earning enough. You just focus on all this negativity. And then all of a sudden I realized what I was going through was, I was meant to go through it. So I come out the other side. And I remember the biggest thing I had one day was here. And I remember just had this aha moment of, I was all worried about losing my house because it wasn't going to earn money. I wasn't going to be a police officer. And I was like, well, hang on a sec. If I don't have my health, I got nothing. It doesn't matter what I own, what I do, how much money I earn. But if I don't have my health, I have absolutely nothing. And so then I invested every cent I had into my education, into my certification, into my healing. I put all this money into healing and everything like that. And I don't regret one ounce of it. I borrowed money. I spent over $43,000. The money I didn't have.
Self-education.
Yeah, my own self-education.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
And I don't regret one moment of it because I took responsibility that day. That day when I had that aha moment, I took responsibility. Didn't matter what happened to me. It was no one's fault. It's no one's blame. It wasn't the police force. It wasn't anyone. It was all meant to happen. And that was meant to change my life so that I can do what I do with the passion that I do it. So, yeah, I think that answers your question.
Wow.
Sorry.
whether it did or it didn't, it was very impactful. Whether it did or it didn't. It's what makes you feel like so driven, like that's like for me, like $43,000, like that's a lot. Like, you know, that can be a lot of money, and there's a lot of stuff that I personally like listen to and stuff where they say, you know, invest in your self-education, blah blah blah. That's the first place to invest, all this sort of stuff. When I think of $43,000, and I'm surely I'm not alone, I think, wow, that's a lot of money to one, like. You sort of feel like, hey, is there any guarantee, or is it, you know, like sometimes when you invest that in a house or something like this, you think, oh, but in saying that, as you said, if you don't have your health, you don't even have your house anyway. And I don't even know what the question is, but something like, what made you continue to feel that there was some instinct within you that was like, I've still got it, like this hasn't ended, like it'll never end, and I'm sure we could probably have that conversation, right? It never ends, But as that process is going along, you know, you're $20,000 into it, thinking like this is still the right path, no matter what, you know.
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to say this, and I know this today: personal development has no finish line.
Correct. I'd agree.
No finish line. So you never ever finish. You never finish learning. You never finish anything. Back on the path, going back 5-7 years ago, I wasn't looking at it as, oh, what am I going to get from this? What am I going to get? Everything that I invested into helped me heal, because I was investing in it. Like, I didn't do the coaching course to become a coach initially. I did the coaching course because it was I was being coached through it. And then that led to, so, first of all, you invest, so many $1,000, and then from there, it's helping you, it's changing who you are. And so then I invested something else, and then I didn't have money, so I borrowed money and stuff like that. But I just had this knowing, there's this true knowing that you're going to be all right and everything's going to be all right. And I was, money did come and things did happen and things did fall into place. And now today, like, I could tell you a dozen stories of how I've created things through visualization, through connection, through just feeling, putting on feelings and everything. There's a goal setting process that I do with people. Mm-hmm. And when I line people up, and just myself, for example, when I line myself up with my values, with my vision, and I take myself out into the future and I feel it and I see it and I can hear it, and you create it, and then you come back, and then you fall in love with the process, not the goal. You fall in love with the process of creating that goal. It just happens. It's going to happen. You just know it's going to happen. And it's that knowing that I have in the work that I do. Now, I dedicate the work I do today to all the people that haven't survived. I've had many colleagues who haven't survived. There's many colleagues, in different police forces, in the army, all the military organisations, in the ambulance, the fire brigade, police, doesn't matter. Anyone that has suffered PTSD in any way, or any sort of thing, in any sort of way, there's some people that don't come through the dark night of the soul. I'm very fortunate that I did. And I dedicate everything I do to that today, to helping those that are still here. So you just have a knowing. When you trust that knowing, you know that you're on the right path. It's like you doing these podcasts. You don't know where it's going. You just know that's what you're meant to do. It's because you're aligned with your values. And when you're aligned with your values, it's like you're on your true north. And it's like if you had a compass, and the compass had, as you know, a compass has a needle that always points to north. And if you're imagine that needle that's always facing north is your true values, the values that light you up in your heart and your head. And when you're on that path, it doesn't matter what's in your way, you will get through it. But if you're not on that path, if you're in a job and you're just like, yeah, I hate my job, or I hate going to work, you're not on your path. You've got to follow your path. It takes courage, it takes vulnerability, and sometimes it takes guidance from a coach or from someone, but
yeah,
it's there.
Having worked in both the fire brigade and police force and worked through your own PTSD, what do you feel can be done to help others in this line of work? How can they be better prepared for what they're going to potentially witness and go through?
This is a question I'm extremely passionate about. And first of all, I should say is I still have PTSD. I'm just able to manage it and live a normal life because I'm more congruent, more connected, more just the practices that I have in place keep me focused. Yeah, much different person, obviously. I think it's very important to understand I have no remorse, blame, or anything like that for anything that I've experienced in any organisation. Can things be done differently? 100%. Can we learn from what people are going through? 100%. And so, first of all, we've got to learn. But number two is, if just what I spoke about then, our values are the most crucial thing. And if we knew what our values were, the values that light us up, the values that we connect to with our heart and our soul and our mind, the things that we're so passionate about that give us our vision, that give us our drive, the things that we will move mountains to get to. If we knew those values, and we have values in all different areas of life, we have values in our career, values in our relationships, values in money and all that sort of stuff. If we were connected before we go into the police force, and we still can go in, we can do our career, But then when things go off track, we might know that. We might know our values off track. If we know our communication style, like whether we're visual, whether we're auditory, whether we're kinesthetic, then we'll know what's going on there. There's different things. There's 3 key things, I believe. If we know our values, if we know our way we communicate, and if we're aware of one thing, and it's called the drama triangle, and that's where some people are brought up in this drama triangle. And anyone that wants to look it up, it's spelled Karpman, Karpman. And in the drama triangle, someone is the rescuer or the people pleaser, someone is the victim or the poor me, and then in the other corner is the bully. Now we can be in this triangle all on our own. One minute we're just like, oh, why is it always happening to me? And then the next minute we're going, it's okay, you got this, you can get this. And the next minute, God, you're an idiot. And we're dancing around this triangle, right? And it's just a polarity of energy, and people live their whole life in this drama triangle. And if you've been born in, if you've grown up in this drama triangle, or you're not aware of this drama triangle, you go into the police force, you can dance around this triangle, not only with the people that you're working with, the victims and the crooks, but also with the people you're working with. And this is where bullying harassment comes in, because some people need to be controllers. And so that's another thing. If we have all this awareness before we go in, if we have this awareness of what's going on, it can change who we are when we're in there. But I think the biggest thing is the identity. You are always you. You are not your work. And when we become our work, I became a police officer 24/7. I lived my life 24/7 to be a police officer. No matter what happened, I would always jump, I would always work the hours, I'd always be there. I was always police officer first, and then life came second. My identity became the police officer. I lost my true identity. I disconnected from my true self. And when we do that, and then we lose what we have, what do we got left? We've got nothing. We've got nowhere to go. And if we know who our true self is, and I think Ash Barty did this the best. She was interviewed, for her famous, Wimbledon and everything like that. She remained Ash Barty. She remained the girl from the book. She remained who she was. She didn't become tennis. She didn't become her sponsors. She didn't become everything else. She remained herself. She didn't become the identity of tennis. Where there's many other tennis players who have become who they are, and then all of a sudden the expectations and pressure stops them from, the moment they don't achieve what they need to achieve, then they crumble or their mental health affects them. So it's all about our identity. We've got to find out who we truly are and what truly lights us up, and the only way we can do that is know our values. And obviously we go way off course here, but I honestly believe you could come into recruit training and connect recruits, let them understand who they are, understand identity, go out there and save the world. But at the end of the day, you're still you. You're still you. You're still whoever you are. If you're a family man, if you're a husband, if you're a wife, it doesn't matter. You are still you. You might take on all these tags.
Yeah, I'd say not too many people, including myself, have at times, but writing down values and knowing that's what you value, and it's potentially, I think it's something that should be taught to kids, just to even have an awareness of that.
To do values with me.
To do values.
If you were to do your career, if someone was to come and do their career values with me, that is a whole session.
Yeah.
Just to, first of all, to elicit them, then to get them in order, and then to test them internally and externally. Because we have what's known as shadow values and golden values. So we have to have an equal, they're on both sides. So just for example, if you love control, if you're everything's about control, that could be your shadow value. And you might say, if you have love control, you're going to love freedom. If you love freedom, you're going to love control. So you pretty much always have those two. And there's lots of other values that are the same. Some people love attention. Some people love to be belonging. So there's all these values. You've got to know what your values are, and you've got to own them.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing. It's a big session. But once you know your values, and what you want to achieve, then we can connect it and build it. So, but most people don't.
we could go on down that path forever, I think. So, after researching your life, you've changed so much of who you are in the last 5 to 6 years. What advice would you give people who look up to you and aspire to your strength, courage, vulnerability, and dedication?
I think the biggest thing is we naturally want to avoid pain. We naturally want to avoid facing anything that's going to make us feel uncomfortable. And that's pretty much normally all the stuff that we need to sort to move forward. And there's a great book called The Obstacle is the Way. And
Ryan Holiday.
yeah, and it's so true. It's today I embrace anything that happens, whether it be an injury, whether it be something in life, whether it be anything at all. I turn around and I go, what is there for me to learn here? What is there for me to learn? And it's always the universe is telling you something. But if you keep running away from everything, if you run away from the pain, if you avoid something, you go into addictions, or you go into avoidance behavior, or you go from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, you can't learn. If you can't learn, then you're not going to change. Things are only going to get worse. So we've really got to, take a step back and go, all right, what's going on here? What is there for me to learn here? And we've got to do it we've got to be open and receptive, and we've got to be vulnerable. We've got to be courageous. It's such a massive thing. And people that are trying to control life, they're not controlling life, they're just trying to control their anxiety. But there's no such thing as a perfectionist. A perfectionist is just someone who is just trying to control everything because they're trying to avoid the pain, the fear underneath. And we have to just stop. People don't stop. People doing 10,000 things at once. No, we've got to stop. The sooner we stop and walk into the obstacle, confront the obstacle and go, right, what do I need to learn here? What do I need to let go of here? Let's do it. And then all of a sudden, it happens so quickly, and we embrace it and we go through it, and then all of a sudden we create this amazing life, and don't get me wrong, it never, like I said before, personal development never stops. And I do a breakthrough session every year. In fact, this February I'll spend 4 days with another group of coaches, and we'll do a breakthrough session where we just keep removing anything from the past, any limiting belief, any conflict of value, anything like that, and just continue and do it every year. Because I want to be the best version of myself continuously. I want to continue to learn. So I love my breakthrough sessions, and I'm so excited. It's coming up.
When's that? February?
End of February. Last 2 days of February, first 2 days of March. So.
And do you find in those breakthrough sessions that it's new things or old things that have arisen?
Always new. So you've got 2,000 things in your life that trigger you.
Yeah.
Imagine your life as an onion multiplied by 1,000. So you've got all these layers, and we only are aware of the things on the surface that are in our awareness, right? But there's so much. I've cleared a lot of the surface stuff, a lot of the hard stuff. I cleared a lot of that, and then last year I did it, and I didn't realize, but there was this roadblock came up of something when I was only 13, and my dad, and he couldn't work anymore, and I didn't even remember this memory, but it came up during the breakthrough, and now how I believed that I couldn't. All of a sudden I just had this limiting belief because it happened to Dad. I believed it was going to happen to me, and it did. We were the same age when I had the breakdown with PTSD and couldn't work and couldn't earn money. Dad was the same age at 50 when he could no longer work in a butcher shop, and because of his back. And they said, if you don't get out of this now, you'll be in a wheelchair. And he had to sell up. And back then, we're talking back in the late 70s, he didn't have superannuation. He didn't have insurance. He didn't have anything like that. And so that came up, this limiting belief that, we'd only make it to 50 and not be able to work. And they're just limiting beliefs. There's stories that we tell ourselves that we don't even realize we've told ourselves.
And I'm curious with that, so obviously being over 50, so at 50 or thereabouts is when you've completely flipped your life on its head.
Yeah.
Changing your life and flipping on its head at 50, there'd be a lot of limiting beliefs around being able to create new careers, start a new life, all that sort of stuff at that age. What were some of the things that you learn and would advice you'd give on someone trying to, in that age bracket? So after 50, changing, not necessarily be a life coach, but going, actually this isn't what I want to do, and I want to start exploring other things or whatever that is. Advice you'd have with someone flipping their career at 50.
I think it's worth mentioning, I didn't plan on flipping my career. Given the choice at the time, I wouldn't have, because I really believed I would retire. I loved being a police officer. I loved what I did. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the organisation that I worked for. But clearly it wasn't my path anymore, and I would have kept fighting that if I hadn't been hit with the Mack truck of PTSD. But I think it's about taking everything. You've got to fall in love with the process. You've got to be present. Like, if the moment we start worrying about, what am I, what about when I'm 60, I won't be able to do this, I won't have this much super and this, we start worrying about everything, right? And now the moment we're worrying about everything, well, now we can't create anything, because while you're in anxiety, you can't be enjoying today. So it's the fear of everything that stops us from creating anything. And the moment we surrender and we just start doing just falling in love with the process, small goals, just start falling in love with the process, and start trusting. We've got to trust the universe. We've got to trust ourselves. We're all here on a journey, but we're all here to evolve. And we have to go through our obstacles. We have to sometimes pivot, change whole directions, because we can't take, people are so materialistic, but that's our ego, right? We have to step out of the ego and connect with our true self and get on our true path. And once we do that, once we clear the blockages and get on our true path and just do what lights us up, we can do anything. Like, if you told me I would be here, sitting here, being a life coach, passionate and driven and so connected and congruent today, if you said that 10 years ago, I would have said, you are kidding yourself. You are absolutely kidding. There's no way I would have planned this. There's no way. I remember being in the police force thinking, I don't want to study anymore. I don't want to do this. I just want to do this till I retire. That's it. Now I can't ever see myself retiring. I love what I do. So yeah, it's interesting. You've really got to, don't put the barricades up. Don't say, I'm never going to do that, or I never want to do that, or anything like that. Just live for today. Yeah. Follow your bliss. What lights you up?
Isn't it Joseph Campbell or something?
Joseph Campbell. Follow your bliss.
What event or person then, if you were to be able to pick one over, like obviously you've had so many impactful moments over these 5-6 years, but what event or person has had the biggest impact on your journey, and why?
Oh, that's a tough question, because there's been so many pivotal moments, and I think that's really important. People think that, I'll get this therapy or I'll get this and my whole life will change, but everything that we do is a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone going forward. And I think there's 3 key moments that come forward. And one was, I'd come out of child protection operations. I was having massive memory issues. I was having night terrors. I wasn't telling anyone because, admitting something was wrong was a sign of weakness, and then there was all sorts of issues with that. And I had a breakdown, and then I came back, and I had to prove myself again. And they wanted me to go back to Canberra and do this 4-week course. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. I really want, because I really wanted to be a police officer, but I knew there was all this stuff happening in my mind. I knew my mind wasn't right. And I was abusing alcohol, trying to sleep at night and everything like that. And I was in the college, and I totally lost my memory. I wasn't even remembering the people that I met the day before. I remember sitting in the college, waiting for dinner, and someone came over and was talking to me. And then they went away, and the guy next to me said, who was that? And I said, I've got no idea. And it turned out I'd spent a week working with that person in Sydney office the week before. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on with my memory. I didn't know I was having all these night terrors. I didn't know I was having all these bad dreams. I didn't know I couldn't sleep. I just knew I had to get through this course, or, I'd be or I didn't know what would happen. I wouldn't be able to be a police officer. And anyway, finally, everything was, I started having really dark moments. I was thinking of suicide. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't even type anything. I couldn't answer questions. Couldn't do nothing. It was just got worse and worse and worse. Sleep got worse and worse and worse. Anyway, finally I got called into this office, and there was a superintendent there, and I wasn't going to pass this course because I couldn't do anything. Couldn't get anything right. I've never forgot this. Unfortunately, I could never remember her name, and I don't remember much about it. I just remember she turned around and she said, "Is there anything we need? Was there something going on?" I said, "Yeah, I think I have to be honest. I got PTSD, and I think it's come back since I've been really bad since in the college." She goes, "Have you got a psychologist?" I said, "Yeah." I told her who the AFP psychologist was, and she goes, "Will you call her when you leave here?" I said, "No." And haven't told this story. And she put her hand on my arm. She put her hand on my arm and she said, "Don't move. Give me the number. I'm going to call her right now." And the fact that she touched my arm brought me back into I was disassociated, brought me back into association, and made me act and give her the number and everything like that. But when she asked me would I call her, I was so dissociated. I had no intention of calling her, and I had no intention of ever coming back. I was obviously going to end it. And it was just that simple act of compassion and empathy that new superintendent had that saved my life that day. And obviously there was several sliding door moments after that, but on that moment, on that day, that saved my life.
We just, as humans, like for that particular person that you can't remember their name, that you just never know how much of an impact you're going to have on somebody's life. You've just always got to be aware of that. Yeah, just act in the best nature you can, and be purposeful, and you just never know. Like that impact that woman's had on your life in that moment is life-saving.
Yeah, it was.
And she may never know that. And it just amazing. Yeah.
And you will never know the day that you have an impact on someone else's life.
That's sort of
I will never know it. You will never know it. No one knows it. We've just got to do what is right.
Yeah.
To help other people. And I touch people's lives for a very short period of time, and then they go on, and someone else might touch their life, and someone else. But you'll never know when you make that enough. I call it. It's just we change the trajectory just 1%. And that sliding door moment that happened when I came back off that beach, what happened that night was unbelievable, about some friends coming out of nowhere, you know what I mean? And this superintendent, just touching my arm. If she hadn't touched my arm, nothing would have changed. But she touched my arm, and that's all I remember is her putting her hand on my arm, and that brought me back into that conscious awareness at that time. I don't remember much else. I don't remember much about the college. I just remember having these horrific dreams every single night and not being able to remember anything, recall anything. That's all I remember.
What a blessing. Wow. I've read that Tony Robbins said the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can deal with. And I feel there are things that are going on in the world now, like everyone gets a medal, as kids and stuff, and that has the potential to make people less resilient growing up, and therefore unable to deal with uncertainty. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think we can teach kids to deal with uncertainty, and in turn to be resilient without experiencing the uncertainty and trauma resilience is generally built from? And I know, we've both spoken about this before even being interviewed, it's with it, at some point we've both become grateful for things that have actually built our resilience till now in our life. And I feel that there's potential that we're not building resilient children somehow, but want to be able to build that resilience in children without them having to go through. So, because I know for myself, some of the things I've been through, you go, gee, I wouldn't want my best friend going through that. I certainly don't want my kids going through that. I know it hasn't been brought up yet, but I read you were adopted and you found out you were adopted at 7. I'm sure now you're very grateful for the fact that you've been through that and that you were adopted and you love I'm sure you call your parents, your mum and dad.
But then you'd probably at the same point go, gee, I wouldn't want, blah, 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 maybe, because the potentially getting through that and seeing it as being a positive thing is not necessarily 100% success rate. There's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that.
There's
Wow,
a lot
wow,
in that.
wow, wow. Where do you start
There's a
on
lot
that?
in that.
I think it's quite interesting. One of the beautiful things is, as long as we haven't got a closed mind or a closed mindset, we're always open to learn and change our perspective and our beliefs and everything like that. And if you'd asked me that question even just a couple of years ago, I would have given you a different answer. But today, I think the key is our challenges create us. And I think in some ways, some kids are resilient. In other ways, parents they become a little bit like helicopter parents and they overprotect them. And so when those kids hit hard times and they're not independent, then they struggle. But every struggle is a gift. Everything we go through is a gift that we are given to become stronger. And, I was adopted and I never forget the time. I still have that identical memory of being there, being told and running away and all that sort of stuff. And there was lots of issues that followed that. And there was lots of things that happened within the family that followed that. But now I look at it very differently. I'm very grateful for the mother who gave birth to me. For whatever reason, she couldn't keep me. I don't know those reasons. But if she hadn't given birth to me, then that was my way into this earth realm as a soul. And then I was very grateful for the parents that adopted me. And I was very grateful for my dad, who I believe is with me all the time. And he's like my guide, my mentor. Whenever I have a question, I always ask my dad, what do you think? Stuff like that. But every challenge is our opportunity to grow. Every challenge, doesn't matter what it is. And I think it's fair to say that the family in Sydney that lost those 4 children and they started that foundation, I Forgive, the most powerful thing anyone can do. Not something everyone can do, I give it that, but just even forgiving ourselves for the way we've done things or the way we've acted. But I have no doubt today, and trust me, it takes a long time, it takes a bit of a time to get here. Every single challenge, whether it be an injury, whether it be an illness, whether it be a relationship breakup, whether it be the loss of a job, doesn't matter what it is, everything we have something to learn from it. There's always something to learn. And when we change the way we look at it, we can change our whole life. And so even though some kids today are not resilient, when they hit the obstacles and they get through those obstacles, they will be 10 times more resilient, but they'll have 10 times more understanding when they come through the other side of it. We can't learn, we can't grow without having challenges.
So what's one little thing that advice or whatever you could give to a parent in helping their child go through that obstacle to build that resilience then?
Yeah, don't try and control everything. You can't control everything. There's a lot of parents, they want their kids to do everything they want them to do. And I see a lot of teenagers now with extreme anxiety. And the reason why they're suffering such bad anxiety is because the parents are trying to get them to live up to their values. They're not allowing the child to live their life. We've got to stumble, we've got to fall. And we've all got different values inside of us, and sometimes we have to just go out there and test the water. So, look, at the end of the day, the kid will go through anxiety and they might run away, or they might turn to drugs, or they might actually turn out all right. You never know. It just depends how resilient that kid is inside, whether they can make it or not. But sometimes the greatest thing we can do with kids is meet them where they're at. And that's what I do with clients, is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, when you come and see me, I meet you where you're at. I take your view of the world. Doesn't matter what it is. And There's no judgment, there's no shame, there's no guilt, nothing when you come into my office. Doesn't matter what it is, what's ever happened to you or whatever you've done. Because whatever it is, you are who you are for a reason, and you just need, sometimes you just need someone to talk to. You know, you need to get it off your chest, or you need to get it out. A lot of people tell me stories of things that happened to them when they were kids, and they've been too embarrassed to talk about it. You know, the worst thing of all is to suffer humiliation. And, you know, and it's just when we can talk about it and look at it differently, it can change their whole trajectory of life, change who they are. So, yeah, everything is a challenge, but it's a challenge that we have to go through. And we've got to embrace that challenge, and we just got to get curious. It's like, okay, what is there for me to learn here? What do I need to learn? That we're always going to grow. When we learn, we're going to grow. We just got to embrace the challenge.
So, and some of that is teaching kids in that resilience is, what did they learn from this?
Yeah, we've got to go through. We've got to let them. We've got to let a kid fall over. You know, we've got to let a kid do something. You know, and I mean, don't get me wrong. There's got to be boundaries. I mean, I've parented children, but yeah, no, you've got to try and see the world from the kid's eyes. Not a no, don't do this. No, don't do that. No, don't do this. Not, you know, you've got to have. They've got to understand the consequences as well. You know, you could turn around to a kid and say, okay, you know, explain it out. Don't have this no, yes. No, do this because I say so. Well, the kid's going, I was a rebellious child. Trust me. If you told me don't do something, I did it. If you told me don't slam the door, I slammed it. So, yes, I was a pain in the... My mother told me I was a mongrel of a kid. So I think I turned out okay.
I reckon.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. We touched on this before. Many of us have stories that we narrate to ourselves about our life, and we can allow these stories to define who we are and to justify our struggles and addictions. Can you talk about the stories we tell ourselves and how best to deal with these stories? Probably more so if they're negative stories that we're telling ourselves.
Sure. I think the first thing I'm going to say to this is the past is the past. We can't change it, but we can change how long it lasts. So if we keep telling ourselves that story over and over and over again, we're actually myelinating it into our brain. So you think about when you drive a car today, you don't have to think about driving the car, right? Because you've myelinated all the moves of driving a car into your brain. It's neuroplasticity. When you tell yourself over and over and over again, you're useless, you're no good, or whatever, or that this happened to me, or whatever, then you are myelinating that belief into your brain. It's going to happen. Because you're saying it, feeling it, seeing it all the time, over and over again, then you create it. It's visualization, yeah? And so we have to change the story. We have to look forward. Everyone, if you keep looking back, you're going to keep creating what you're looking at. You say to a person, if you have a look at your life today, if you were to go back 10 years ago, that would have been everything wherever you are now is what you were thinking 10 years ago. Everything you're thinking about now is what you're going to create in 10 years' time. The question is, what do you want to create in 10 years' time? Do you want to create more of what you got? Do you want to create something different? And so, you know, it's about the more you tell the story, the more you create the story. You've got to step out of that story and have a look. What do you want to create? What do you want to achieve in life? And if you can't achieve it on your own, then get help. Doesn't matter who it is that you get help from. It could be a coach, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor. It doesn't matter. Someone that helps you, a doctor. Like I work at the Life Medical Centre at Erina, and we have life medical GPs. It's a whole thing comes in. Nutrition, life coaching, everything comes into it. It's not just about here's a script. This is about having a look at your life, what's going on, you know, your traumas and everything like that. So if you don't like your life, change it, but start focusing on what you want, not on what you don't want. And it's just a story. It's just a story. And all it is something that you perceive. It's just a perception, most of the time a perception, what you perceive happened, right? Sometimes the story it's like a fish, you know, this story about the fish, you know, someone comes home and they've got a little fish, and then that story goes on and on and on, and then a year's time that fish is now 3 foot long and it took them 2 hours to bring in and everything like that. Our stories are like that because we keep telling our story over and over again. We actually make them even worse than what they were, you know. So don't get me wrong, there's lots of trauma, and if you need hand to work through trauma, work through it. Because what happens with trauma is we trap, the memory and energy in the body. So the energy might be fear. Let's just say something happened to you and you got a fright, and now you've got the visual of the incident, and now the fear, and you lock those two together in the body, and then every time you have fear, it's like zzz, zzz. That's because you're re-traumatizing, right? So the idea is there's ways to work through that. It's one of the things that I specialize in is getting rid of the emotion in the body. But yeah, just talking to someone, changing the story, focusing on what you want. There's 100 different ways to do it. But just, you've got to be vulnerable, you've got to be courageous, and you've got to step outside and maybe even ask for help, which I think is the hardest thing to do. It's the one thing I couldn't do. When I was having when I had the first breakdown, between the first breakdown and the last breakdown, I was in 100% denial that anything was wrong, because I didn't want to be ostracized or sectioned, or I didn't want anything to happen. I just wanted to do my job. That was it. Even though I wasn't capable of doing it now when I look back on it, I thought I was strong enough to get through it on myself. And I wasn't.
And I think, is there something in like someone external, like you mentioned before about, I can't remember what position that lady was, but they put the hand on your arm, and that triggered you. Like otherwise you might not have got help.
No.
So you wouldn't have got help that time. So there's also that action of somebody else to push, to make you realise that you actually need the help, or that, you know, sometimes we won't do it for ourselves. And so I suppose, and also I wonder if there's like recognising, like helping someone, like how do they recognise that there's actually a story that they're telling themselves, to actually then know that, oh, okay, this is a story I'm telling myself. Is there any process with that to make people actually realise that it is actually a story you're telling yourself, and that you can get help with that story?
Yeah,
rather than real life.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. But just to put it simply, there's two things. There's one question I always have for people. Yeah. When they come in and they're telling me their stories, I give them 5 minutes, because all they're doing is remyelinating the pain back in. They're just putting that pain back in their body. And then I'll turn around and I say to them, what do you want instead? What do you want instead? What do you want in life? And I'll tell you, probably 50% of people go, I don't know. Because they've been focused so much on the stories, they've got no idea what they really want to achieve in life. And so the next thing they'll say, well, I know I don't want more of this and I don't want more of that. Well, now we've gone back into the story. And I said, well, instead of that, what would you like instead? What do you want to focus on instead? What would you like to create? And so that's where we've got to get. We've got to start drawing what it is that they want, because they're focused on the back bit. The other part to that question is, I've lost my chain of thought.
About somebody else helping, because
someone else helping, right? So what happens is, unfortunately, there's a lot of victim groups out there, and they mean well, but they keep the people in the victimhood, right? So they might go along to a victim group, and let's just say something happened to them, and they go, and so then they tell their story again to this victim group, and they go, oh, you poor thing, oh, that's terrible. And yes, it is terrible, but by telling your story over and over again, and now people going, oh, you poor thing, oh, you're such, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. Now they're keeping in victimhood, and if you're in victimhood, now what's going to happen? You can't change. You can't change. They're just keeping them trapped. And what you want is, if someone tells you a story, now you want to go, okay, look, if you can't let go of this, you need to get help. But what do you want instead? We've got to change the direction of, right? So there are support groups out there which actually help people focus on what they want, like creating, helping them create new lives and new directions and everything like that. You need to go to a support group that helps you focus on creating something new, not a support group that keeps you in victimhood. You're a victim the first time something happens to you, but then you're a follower every other time after that, because it just means you're living in victimhood. If you're living in victimhood, then life is just disempowering. It's just it just keeps you. You're a passenger on the bus of life. That's all you are. If you're living in victimhood, passenger on the bus, and you can't go anywhere. You've lost control. You give everything away, but you can take responsibility. And I think I can only use my own story, and that is, even though I was going down the lines of Comcare and the psychiatry, it wasn't working for me. So instead of being a victim and blaming the organisation, blaming the insurance system, blaming everything, that was when I started doing my thing to come out of it.
Yeah.
So we've all been victims. We've all been victims. But it's how long we stay in victimhood that is the key. We've got to step out of it.
Yeah.
And create a new story, a positive story, an empowering story.
And hopefully many do after listening to this. In your book, you say suffering ends when you know and accept who you are. How do you recommend someone goes about knowing and accepting who they are if they don't feel like they know who they are? And you sort of touched on this a little bit before when you said, they got the negative story and say, okay, so what do you want? You go, I don't know. I feel that sort of is hand in hand, like not really knowing who you are and not really even knowing what story you want to tell yourself.
And that's where you need to get help. If you can't do it yourself, like obviously there's lots of books out there. There's lots of programs out there. There's lots of therapists out there. There's lots of ways of doing it, right? It's just about getting it started. And biggest question, like if I said to you, off the top of your head, what's 3 things that you love to talk about? What's something you love to talk about? First thing that comes to mind.
Self-development.
Good. What feeling does it give you when you talk about self-development?
Positive. I feel like it's what's helped me get to where I am after being
Excellent.
in not a good place either.
So it lights you up, right?
Yeah.
What's something that, what do you know a lot about yourself? Just something that you know a lot about. Absolutely anything.
That's one of those things where I feel like, that
not compared to anyone else. Not compared to anyone else. Just something that you know a lot about. So you could go do.
So I don't feel like I know a lot about anything.
Ooh.
I know this could be a therapy session. Quite easily. But I don't feel like I know a lot about anything. Like, so it's quite interesting. And what's interesting about that, and I'll give you an example, and this may make sense. But so I actually train people in publishing software for a job. So people would look at me like, oh, gee, you know a lot. Where I don't feel like I know a lot about that. In fact, I feel like I'm an idiot in some sense, and I'm like just going on with the flow, and that's what I know. That doesn't mean I'm a genius. I might know this little bit.
So that's where you come down, is because now you're making this comparison that you should be a genius, right? But at the end of the day, that's just a limiting belief, right? What you said about yourself. It's just a limiting belief. That's all it is. The thing is, if you're training other people in that work, that means you do know a lot about it, right? It's not compared to anyone else, not compared to anything else. You must know a lot about it. Let me ask you this question. How do you feel when you train people and they learn what you know?
Good. And I like to train people. I find more enjoyment in training people that actually find it hard to take things on.
Why is that important to you?
Because I don't want them to feel dumb.
How does it make you feel?
It makes me feel good because I can make someone else not feel how I feel at times, potentially.
Yep. So you're making a difference.
Yeah.
What?
Like if someone says to me, oh, that person's going to be hard to train, I'll be like, perfect. That's the person I want to speak to.
That's great. I love this. So why do you take that person on? What do you get from it?
I feel like I want to make them feel better about themselves.
How do you feel?
I feel better by making them feel better about themselves.
Yeah. You feel better. What emotions do you feel inside?
Satisfaction.
Yeah. Satisfaction. Good. What else? What other emotions do you feel inside? You're doing well, by the way. Mind you, I've just put you on the spot.
You have. I don't know how to explain that because I probably don't have enough words to describe the emotions potentially, or you've put me on the spot and I'm feeling very nervous. But that warm fuzzy feeling, like I feel satisfied. I feel, accomplished is probably
That's
not.
it.
Is probably
Accomplishment is good.
Is maybe or maybe not the word. That feels like a very technical word for an emotion.
Achievement.
Yeah, I feel good about myself. I feel like, I think because I pre-warned Kerry at the beginning of this interview that this could get emotional. No, because I know I grew up younger, very shy, not feeling like, not feeling very intelligent, like, all that sort of stuff. I didn't do very well in high school, like in year 12. I was doing all right up until year 11 and 12, but then did, and never felt accomplished, never felt like, so I don't ever want, if it's up to me when I'm training someone, I don't want them to ever feel like I felt. So I will do my best to make sure that person doesn't feel that way.
So you were given a gift. When you went through high school and you felt that way, that was when you made an unconscious decision that you will never let anyone feel that way. So now that gave you the gift to be there for those people, to make sure that they can get through stuff. If you had not experienced that in high school, you would not be driven to do what you do today for those people. It's just a gift. Absolute gift.
Yeah, I think many things in my life have made me very compassionate towards having made my own, in some instances, terrible mistakes. It has made me very more compassionate towards people that have made mistakes.
We all make mistakes.
Definitely.
We all make mistakes, and that's the biggest thing is people.
Or whether we should probably even call them mistakes, but anyway.
I don't believe it. I don't believe
not.
mistakes. I don't believe failure. I believe everything is feedback, and we might not get it right or whatever. It's just feedback, and we've got to get curious about the feedback. What's this feedback giving us? You know what I mean? So we've all made. I mean, God knows my past is extremely checkered prior to when I was 30, and I made horrendous mistakes. But every one of them I was meant to learn from, not feel bad about or regret or anything like that, or be ashamed of. It was all about learning. So, well done. I want to congratulate. Thank you for sharing. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn it around.
No.
But what I was,
as we discussed before this started, I had the potential. It's still got the potential. It's not over yet. So, yeah, no, definitely don't feel. I'm happy for you to turn it back on me. That's for sure. No problem at all.
The reason why I was asking those questions is because there's lots of stuff in our life already that lights us up, whether it be our kids, whether it be travel, whether it be our work or anything like that. Now, those things that light us up means we're on our path of our values. And so we've just got to grab those values, whatever they are. Could be achievement, could be accomplishment, it could be anything like that, and take that now to create what it is we want to create. We take what we're already doing right, and use. I use that to connect with what it is that a person wants to create. Because the person says, I don't know what I want, right? But they absolutely love spending time with animals. And it's like, well, you love animals. Why do you love animals? And it's like, they just, this is this. And they light up and they're in a smile. And I said, well, maybe you need to be working with animals. I couldn't do that. Well, now we've got to remove the values conflict, right? And you'll be surprised. When you're open and receptive, your whole life can just change.
Yeah. And I think for me, and doing this podcast is one of those is just making yourself vulnerable. You mentioned vulnerability early on, right? And being open to the fact that you can ask me something and we can have that conversation. And I know through my little bit of experience so far in life that it's at that edge of being vulnerable and doing something that doesn't quite feel comfortable, that within that it's just the right thing to do at this moment, that's where magic takes place, and that's where you learn the most as a human, I think, on the journey that we're on.
You do. When we step out of ego and we just allow ourselves to be.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. We're going to touch on a Facebook post that I read in researching you and doing a little bit of reading about your life. This Facebook post was a post about writing the date backwards when doing a book signing for your latest book. You wrote, "The old me would have been embarrassed, ashamed, and even frustrated. But instead, I cracked up laughing, embraced my gift, and shared it with those around me. Embrace your uniqueness, embrace your imperfect self, but most importantly, embrace your gifts, especially the gifts that have pushed you out of your comfort zone to get you through life. Can you share the process you would go through to help someone embrace something about themselves that they currently don't see as being a gift?"
I think a classic is, I think you just gave that example. Like you've got this limiting belief that you're not good enough, or that you're not good at anything. And the moment we realize that we use that to change who we are, or we use that to live a different life, to become a better person. And you quite often see it, I see it a lot with clients who have come through a childhood that is not a very nice childhood. And they may have not had any attention, any love. There may have not been any in the family, or they may have been abused or anything like that. And now they've got kids, and so they've raised the kids the exact opposite way. They've ensured that they're home for the kids. They've ensured that they go to the sporting events and everything like that. They're gifts, right? I know it's not very nice to live in some of those houses when we're children, but every time we experience something, we learn what we don't want, so that we do the opposite, to help other people. So they're gifts. And I remember my dyslexia. I remember, first of all, wearing glasses and being called Four Eyes when I was in second class. And I didn't embrace that very well, so I didn't wear glasses. But then with my dyslexia, I was always having to reset. I didn't really know it was dyslexia. I had to resit exams, and I was always resetting things. But what it did is it made me resilient in a way that I learnt ways around it. So I became really good with my hands. I became really good with my mind. I could create things in my mind. I became really good at doing other things. And I learnt different ways of studying. I learnt that I had to study longer and all that sort of stuff. So it gave me strength. It gave me courage to do things. I didn't go to uni because I didn't believe I would. At the time, I didn't believe I was good enough. I didn't believe I could get through it because of I just obviously couldn't write things the right way around or read things the right way around. And but later on, it didn't stop me. When I wanted to join the police force, I managed to get in. But I was in my 30s when I joined the police force. So, and today, now being a master practitioner of NLP and a life coach, there's so many different techniques that I use now today to remember things, to recall things, and everything like that. So, my whole life has changed, obviously, but now I use all that to help people learn. So it's, once again, stepping out of our story and into, what it is that we're creating, looking how we've changed, what we've done. And sometimes we just need help. We just need someone to help us realize what we're actually doing and how we're doing it and how we're feeling and what we're creating. And sometimes it's just the people we're surrounded with.
And potentially, I suppose, be able to verbalize that reference to point out that, hey, remember this is actually the gift from that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something we can naturally pick up ourselves,
No.
In October last year, you took out the Australian champion for stand-up paddleboard surfing in the women's over 40s and third in the over 50s. So my assumption is you are competitive. Do you feel the competitive focused mindset that is required to compete at that level is also what allowed you to have greater focus on your own recovery? And what else about the sport helped you through your initial recovery and even today?
First of all, I wouldn't say I'm competitive.
Interesting.
Yeah. I have my whole life competed in water sports, from dragon boating, outrigging, ski racing, you name it, sup surfing, sup paddling. Everything has always been something to do with water. Doesn't matter what it's been, it's always been on water, even sailing. And there's no doubt I've had competitive moments where I've been competitive, but today am I competitive? No, but obviously I compete when I'm in the moment. I'm competing in the moment, but today it's more about connecting my mind, body, soul with everything. So I do visualization. Last year I sup surfed, and it lined up with my values. It was what I wanted to do. This year I'm not doing it because it doesn't line up with my values anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to compete, but not to the level I competed last year. I'm not even going to enter half the competitions. I'm doing something totally different this year that I've never done before. So I followed what lights me up. So when I was racing skis, the sense of achievement, that the process, the falling in love with the process, falling in love with the path, that's what it's all about. The camaraderie, the adventure, the travel, that's what it's all about. And competing to your very best, like ticking all the boxes that you do everything right along the way. Winning was obviously a fantastic reward, but I did not do it for the reward. I did it because I fell in love with the process. You know, every day I get to the beach in the morning, 5:30. Every day, when I was training for that, I was competing. I was in the moment. Everything was just following what lit me up. Spending time on the ocean. Spending time on the ocean has been very important for my mental health. It's been very important for, I believe I have a oneness when I'm on the ocean, like a connection with Mother Nature and the universe. And I quite often, it's like meditation to me, to be on the ocean and surfing. Surfing is about a sense of freedom, because when you're on a wave, it's never the same thing. You're always doing something different. The wave's different. The weather conditions are different. The board I ride is different. So it's the freedom. Surfing gives me freedom, and then it gives me an expression of freedom. And that's why I love it so much. So I was very fortunate to surf really well and to take it out, and I'm grateful I took it out. But I wouldn't say I do it because of competitiveness. No, I'd say it because it was just passion, pure passion. I just love it out there. So, but yeah, no, it was that's an interesting question. And yes, can I tell you, through my whole recovery, I was living in Sydney when things started, and I was a member of Pacific Dragons Outrigging and Dragon Boat Club, and that club became my family. That club and the members of that club will be lifetime friends. And they saw me go through the worst of the worst, and there was several of those people that were there with me while we were paddling. When I was paddling, it was like I became associated again, because you were constantly dissociated when you're in PTSD. And when I was paddling with the team and on the water, I'd become associated. I'd feel good. But then when I get off and I'd sort of stand on shore, all of a sudden I dissociate, and I started to notice that. So yeah, paddling became a crucial part of my recovery, and still is today.
So it must be like, I know, with addiction and potentially then not knowing much about PTSD, the opposite to those things is connection.
Yeah, and we don't realize it because we're running away from it. I ran away from relationships. I become reclusive. I became addicted to it. I used alcohol. You do everything that is the opposite, because the pain of what's going on, the terrors and all that sort of stuff it's just too painful to and you think there's nowhere out, but it's actually connection. Connections, it's life-saving. So yeah, it's an interesting beast. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I know so many people have got it. So, but there is a way through it. You know, you just got to keep searching out the right person to help you. There's lots of them out there.
And saying that as far as helping, do you have any other forms of exercise or meditation that you recommend to people for anything? You know, we touched on before we chatted. You had different breathing exercises. I don't know if they're that, or just anything. You know, just and not necessarily for someone. I believe even from this conversation, someone with severe PTSD or anxiety beyond what you'd recommend now. Like that's definitely, I think, seek help. But for someone, just as an introduction, like some sort of meditation or breathing exercise.
Obviously, I'm a breath coach, so it's you know, there's several 2-minute breath coaching techniques that I can teach people that helps. But the greatest thing I say to people is, people think you have to sit down and you have to focus, you know, on your hands or whatever, and you got to meditate. That's great if you can do it, but not everyone can do it. If you like gardening and you love gardening, that can be a form of meditation. If you love getting on the ocean and surfing, that's a form of meditation. I've got a couple of clients who love cleaning. That's their meditation.
I hope
they
they do
love
that
it.
as a job.
No, they don't. They do that in their house. But this is it, right? We've got to be careful we don't judge people.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is several clients who love cleaning.
Yeah.
And they get, you know what they get? They get rewarded. When they clean their home and it's shiny and it smells nice, they're rewarded. And when we're rewarded, that's like we get this sense of validation. And that's what we're after, right? So breathing is great. If you can do breath exercise, there's lots of breath exercises out there and everything like that. I do teach some clients some breathing exercises, but the greatest thing is just go and if you've got animals, go and spend 2 minutes with your pet. Play with your pet. If you've got kids, be like a child. Get down on the ground and be like a child. They're all forms of meditation because they're all forms of you being present. Meditation is just about bringing you back to this moment right here, right now. When I'm on the ocean, I'm present. When some people are gardening, they're present. Do you know what I mean? So it's all about, if you can just be present, you know, my biggest thing is if you can be present, just starting off with 2 minutes. 2 minutes where you're focused right here, right now, in this very second, this very moment. There is nothing you can worry about. When you're in this moment right here, right now, what's to worry about right here, right now? Nothing.
Yeah.
But when our mind's wandering, and if we allow our mind to wander all the time, then we end up with mind monkeys. But, you know, if we can practice every day, just focusing just in the moment, then we can change. We start teaching our mind that it can be still. And once our mind learns it can be still, it just increases it. It's like, you know, it's like riding a push bike. You know, you slowly start to ride a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. You know, the mind's the same. You've got to practice it. Just because you can't do it right here, right now, you know, we've got to build it. It's muscle memory.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just...
That's cool because that's one of the simplest things, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, do what you love.
It's not meditation, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. You don't have to do meditation for the sake of meditation.
Yeah.
You might walk on the beach.
Yeah.
And you start taking in everything, you know, the smell of the air and everything. Or you might walk through bush and you start looking
Just
at all...
actually walk on the beach. Don't walk on the beach. Think about...
Yeah, actually walk on the beach.
Yeah.
Actually walk on the beach. Or walk through bushland and admire things.
Yeah.
If you're in gratitude for everything that's around you, everything you have, everything that you like, just, you might have a terrible life, but you're actually able to walk. You can be in gratitude for that. You might have a terrible life, but you're actually about to eat something. You can have gratitude for the food. You might have a terrible life, but you got a dog. Have in gratitude for the dog. Because when you're in gratitude, you can't be in fear, you can't be in anxiety, you can't be anything. Because gratitude is just everything. And so it starts small. Everything starts small. And then it just grows.
Perfect. In your book, you say you truly believe the relationship, and we've touched on this at various questions. You truly believe the relationship between energy, emotions, and the physical body is so important to understand. Can you touch on and explain this connection?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have touched on it. And I think the biggest thing is people ignore it, and I you know, I did. I was having these shocking nightmares and horrendous nightmares and night terrors and memory loss and all this stuff's happening. And what was I doing? I was ignoring it, thinking I can get through it and everything like that. And you know, sometimes what happens is we ignore stuff to the point where it manifests into illness and disease. And then finally we get hit with a Mack truck and we take action. And everything is connected. Everything is energy. So all the emotion that we experience especially from a child, you know, whether it be fear or anger or hurt or sadness or guilt or anything like that, especially fear. Fear underlies everything. And so that's trapped, right? So we've got this fear. We might have phobias, and we might have, you know, we're a fear of flying, or we're a fear of snakes, or a fear of spiders, or something like that. Well, yeah, you might have those fears, but it's actually fear that's trapped in the body. And so that fear now, if it stays there, will keep adding and adding and adding. Other things will you'll be more fearful. And then all of a sudden you won't be leaving the house, and all of a sudden you won't be doing anything. And then eventually that fear will manifest into, or can manifest into, illness, disease, or injury, or something like that. Everything is connected. And so if the energy can't flow, we're all energy, everything is energy. If energy can't flow through the body, then the cells die. And if the cells die, then something has to happen. The brain goes, oh, this part of the body's not working, let's shut it down. And it's just, everything is connected. It's all totally connected. But we sometimes go along in this world thinking, if I ignore it, it'll go away. But it won't go away, because the more we ignore something, the bigger it gets. And resistance creates persistence. So the more we resist something, it's just going to keep coming back in a different way. So, and people's, you know, I must admit, there must be like this thing when we turn 40 or 50, and then finally we're like, oh, we're finally ready to do something. You know what I mean? Up until then, we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. You know, we can do anything. We can drink any amount of alcohol. We can party all night. And then all of a sudden we become, we can become a bit vulnerable. We go, we trip over and we need to do something. You know, it's like, yeah. But that's just I don't know, call it whatever you want. People call it change of life. I think sometimes we mature.
Yeah.
You know, we grow up.
Did you have that same energy, emotion, connection, and the connection you even talk about spiritually and stuff before, while you're in the police force and going through that? Or is that something you've developed and come to recognise over the last 6 years?
Believe it or not, I actually developed it as a police officer. I remember my mother passed away in 2009, and I transferred back to Sydney because my dad was up on the Central Coast and I didn't want to leave him. And so I transferred back to Sydney, and I remember seeing this lady, and she taught me about, she was doing this energy work on me, you know, to just, I don't even remember how I came to see her actually, it was in Balmain. And then she invited me to a class she was running. It was a Reiki 1 class, and I didn't know anything about this, right? So I go along, I was just fully connected. And then I went on over the next 2 years to become a Reiki master, so using energy work and everything like that. And then I went on to study other energy and acuenergetics, and then I was just always energy, I was drawn to it. And in some ways, when I went through the breakdown, just knowing the energy connection kind of helped me in a little way. I couldn't do anything, you know, with my mind, but it just helped me. So everything then that I read or that I did was starting to make sense. I realized how important the mind-body-soul connection was, and how everything is energy, you know. And even though I'm a Reiki master, I can do any sort of energy healing. I know that there's other ways of doing it as well. So, and that's the greatest part, is when you come to me, if you believe one thing, we'll work that way. If you believe in energy, we'll work that way. If you believe in breath, we'll work that way. If you believe in timeline therapy, we'll work that way. So I'll work with you within your grounds,
within your belief system,
within your
because
belief
you're not
system.
going to be able to change your belief system. So
I'm not here to change your belief
Yeah.
system. I'm here to help you get rid of your limiting beliefs. But I'll work with you wherever you're at.
Yeah.
Because I honestly believe when we can let go of the things that are holding us back, we can, manifest an amazing life and help so many other people. If I help you become more whole and congruent and let go of the things that are holding you back, then you can go on and help your kids and help your wife and maybe help someone you don't even know. And so it has this flow-on effect. And I honestly believe in all that.
Yeah. Impactful. Very impactful. That sort of brings me on to this next question. So having had the journey that you've had over the last 5 years, I'd love to talk a little bit about your thoughts on taking action and the universe providing.
First of all, we've got to take action with what we're congruent with. So imagine you want to go on a holiday. You want to go to Bali, right? You really, really, really want to go to Bali. But you go into the travel agent and Fiji's on special. So you end up buying a family holiday to Fiji. But the whole time you're in Fiji, you're thinking about Bali. So what's happening is you've got this push-pull going on, right? And you're thinking about what you wanted to achieve, even though you're doing something else. So we've got to be lined up. We've got to be congruent. So we can create anything we want, as long as it's what we want, not what someone else wants. Most people go along in life following someone else's values, not their own. And then when they get to the goal, it's like, oh yeah, I got it. But they're not fulfilled. It's because they're not lined up in their values. There's so many people leave school, don't know what they want to do, and their parents go, well, why don't you study teaching, or why don't you do nursing or something like that? And they go, okay. So they go off to uni and spend all this time at uni, and they're never excited about or anything like that. And before you know it, they're out in a career and they're not enjoying it because they've followed someone else's values, right? Yeah. So we've got to know we can create anything. If we take the action, we can create anything. But it's got to be important to us. There's a thing called dipping, and if you imagine down the bottom is neutral, and so that's just neutral. You might be just sitting there watching TV. You don't care what you're watching. You're just staring at TV. You're playing with your phone at the same time, and you might have a magazine open, right? So you're not really taking any notice. And so, and then all of a sudden something interesting comes on. So that takes your attention away from the phone. So that raises your level of attention. And then someone may come home and they might bring, I don't know, your favorite foods. So that's pleasurable. So now all of a sudden you don't care about the TV. You don't care about what's on your phone. You get up and you have something pleasurable with a friend, right? So that's raised your attention level. But if something important happens, or say something that you're passionate about, it's important, you will go do it. That will go above, it'll go above neutral, it'll go above interesting, it'll go above pleasurable. Now you're going to cross this threshold to something that is important. And when you do something that is important to you, you will do it every single time. And you'll take all the action that you need to do to get there. And I did say the word is dipping, and the top word is danger, and we'll always obviously take action to get out of danger. But you'll always take action if it's important to you. If it's neutral, if it's interesting, if it's pleasurable, you'll do it at the time. But you won't stay on the path. So you've got to do something. You've got to find out what's important to you, what inspires you, what lights you up. Because when you get that, then you will stay on that path and you will achieve it, whatever it is that you want to achieve. So you've got to cross that threshold. TV advertising works really well on it. You think about it, right? You're sitting there and then all of a sudden they might say you love chocolate, and then all of a sudden they bring on a chocolate ad. Well, how often do you go, I want a chocolate, I want to go get a chocolate? Yeah. They play the part really well at the right time. Advertising is very well done.
And do you think, though, on top of taking that action, though, that there's anything from your own experience even, like where you've taken action and then something's just happened that's like, gee, if I hadn't taken that action, this wouldn't have happened? Or
always.
And that there's something in having that faith that by taking that action, assuming as long as it's aligned with your values, that the next best thing will get put in your place for
100%,
that.
100%. And I think this office is a classic example. This used to be a 6 metre by 3 metre zinc 30-year-old shed, which I swear was only staying up because of my stuff that was in it. And I was traversing, but from policing, I'd done my coaching course. I knew I wanted to help people, and I was working part-time at Mingara as a coach, as a life coach. And anyway, they had a break. I never forgot this. It was must have been 4 or 5 years ago. They had a break over Christmas, and I didn't have any work over Christmas. It was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I was sitting outside, and I was looking at this area, and I was like, I got to build my own office. If I have my own office, and then all of a sudden, and then everything, bang, 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 and without a word of a lie, that was January that I was sitting out there. And then I had an old caravan at the time. I thought, well, if I sell the caravan, I could get one of these things and I could do all the work. And I was just bam, 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 like this. And everything just started lining up. Like the doors just started opening and possibilities started. Within exactly from the time I thought about it to the time I opened my office, it was 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Everything manifested. I just created a vision of selling the caravan for the price I wanted to sell it for, even on the day and the exact price. I've still got the thing I wrote out. On this day, I sold my caravan for blah, 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 blah. And I had a visualization of my caravan going away. And that happened. Then I went down to Des Moines and I just chose the module that I wanted. And then they said, oh, we can't deliver it for 3 months. And I said, all right, that's no worries. So I cleared all the shed out of the way and everything like that. Then they rang me and they said, oh, we've got an opening coming up next week. Would you be ready to take it? I'm going, yeah. And it all just came together. All just came together. So when we are on path and we believe in what we do and we just give it 100%, doors just open up. Doorways just open up. But if we're on someone else's path or we're on a path that's not fulfilling, or if 1 minute we're saying, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I really want that, it'll make it really hard.
Yeah.
We've got to clear the resistance out and light it up.
Yeah.
So honestly, people can achieve anything once they get going.
Perfect. Lastly, if a person wants to reach out to get help from a life coach, how do you recommend finding the right life coach for the right person? Is it finding someone that has been through something similar to you, or is there something else that you can think of that would make who someone would choose as a life coach be of most benefit for them?
First of all, the beauty of COVID is we can work with anyone, anywhere. Prior to COVID, we always just looked within our local area. Now, I've got clients in Canberra, WA, Victoria, and, I've worked with people that have travelled overseas and all that sort of stuff. So that's the beauty of this. It's no longer we need to find the person next door. There's many ways. Obviously you can look up life coaches and see what their specialties are. There's health coaches. There's coaches that specialize in relationships. I do not do relationships, by the way. It's not my specialty. I love working with, I love helping people find their true self. I love helping remove trauma. And that's kind of my niche, and resetting their mindset. I love working with the mindset. So I run a program called Reset Your Mindset. But Authentic Education is who I did a lot of my training through. And they actually have a website to find a coach. And all the different coaches they've trained, most of them have gone into special niches. And so, if you want to work on something, sometimes there's a coach. Sometimes it's a referral from someone knows, you know what I mean? So I'm very fortunate. I get a number of referrals from doctors, and but also word of mouth, and it's about asking the questions. You've got to start the process, because when we start looking for something, when we start searching it out, it'll come to us. It's just about, you just got to ask the question. Like I try and speak to all my clients before they see me. In my office, if they want, if they contact me, say they contact me through my website and they want to book in, I'll just often say to them, have you got a moment where we can chat, just see what's going on? And I'll let them know whether, maybe I can help them or maybe I refer them to someone else. There's always a way. You just got to start the process of looking.
Don't be afraid to have that initial chat and ask the question, as I assume if they asked you, said to you, so I need relationship coaching. You'd be like,
I will give them someone they can help. They can help them.
That's right.
Not that I've got anything against it. I've got nothing against it. It's
you just
know
not
my.
They can be better served by somebody else.
It's not my niche. Yeah, some people really niche in that.
Yeah.
And that's not my specialty. Mindset, trauma. I love working with those things because they're things that I've worked on.
Obstacles you've overcome yourself.
Yeah.
So, do you think one of those is finding out if that person's actually been through what you're trying to be helped with, and they've helped themselves in that?
Yeah. Look, I think obviously a lot of people have turned around and said to me, the fact that I've been through a lot, like the different things I've been through, is real. It makes it more real to them. And it's no disrespect to anyone who's gone to uni, but, I've heard stories of people that have tried to do it by the textbook, where I'm more by intuition and experience, you know what I mean? So I suppose, to me, that makes a difference. But yeah, look, it's horses for courses.
That's right. Yeah.
It's horses for courses. And there is no wrong or right answer, but you've got to do what feels right. What feels right. And just because a person may have a white coat and a 9-year uni degree, that person may not be the right person. That person may be doing it 40 years, but that may not be the right person. So you've got to, you got to be vulnerable and just keep searching until that right person comes along. And also too, the right person may come along, and that may be the right person for a year or 2 years, and then you may move on to someone else and someone else and someone else. So that happens as well.
Follow the feeling and intuition.
Yeah, and don't be frightened to go, yeah, we've done our work here. I'm going to...
So I think someone would be frightened that they've built a relationship with someone for 3 sessions and they go, oh, how do I say to them, I want to go and try somebody else now, and you sort of get stuck with that person.
And I say to my clients all the time, and this sounds terrible, my job is to get rid of you. My job is to get you where you want to achieve, where you feel that you don't need my help anymore, and you go out there and do it. And the thing is, we always need help in some way. We always need guidance in some way. So I've got a coach. I've got a psychologist. I've got a team behind me. I've got, obviously I'm part of Authentic Education, because you can't do it. The greatest truism in the world, as Crowe said, is we can't do anything on our own. Can't do anything. Nothing at all can we do on our own. So yeah.
It's funny how we think we can, though.
I know.
And there's something inbuilt within us, I feel, that is like, oh no, you need to do this on your own.
Yeah.
It's
the ego. It's called an ego.
Well, there you go.
Edge God out. Yeah, it's the ego. And we've all got it. We've all got an ego, and we all have to live in our ego sometimes. But when we finally let that ego go and we become who we truly are, then... And we can be vulnerable, and we can be empathetic, and we can be compassionate, and then all of a sudden things can change, life can change.
Well, Kerry, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting, and thank you for pushing through your own personal barriers to go on to help others and share your story. If anyone would like to contact Kerry, simply search Kerry Davenport or go to allelementscoaching.com.au. Thank you, Kerry. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's been quite an evening. I appreciate it. And you're welcome back anytime, if you want to follow up on this therapy side of things.
I know. It's gone down the path, hasn't it? Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks, Luke.
Coffee with the Coastie is brought to you by On the Coast Publications, the publishing house for On the Coast families and On the Coast over 55 community magazines on the central coast of New South Wales.